Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's we'll be comparing the new Toyota Tundra with the new Turbo V6 to the old Toyota Tundra with the iForce V8, and we're going to find out a couple things in today's video. Is the new Tundra actually better than the previous gen Tundra, and is the new powertrain actually better than the previous gen powertrain as well? Before we get into this video, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to the Orem Toyota for giving me some time with both of these trucks. Both of these are available for sale, so if you're interested, link to their website in the description down below. Link to my car buying guide as well. Let's get into it. So powering the previous gen big Toyotas was a 5.7 liter V8 that went through a 6-speed automatic transmission. It produced 381 horsepower and then 401 pound-feet of torque. Fuel economy wasn't the best. Most vehicles with this powertrain are rated about 13 around town and then 17 on the highway. My Land Cruiser, for example, I averaged about 15 miles per gallon, which is right where you would expect it to be. Now with this new generation of big Toyotas, we have a twin-turbo 3.4 liter V6 that goes through a 10-speed. You can also get it with a hybrid that puts out a lot of power. This non-hybrid version, though, still 389 horsepower, so a little bit more horsepower than the previous gen powertrain, but then 479 pound-feet of torque, so a lot more torque. And fuel economy is quite a bit better. You can expect to average, higher teens with this new powertrain non-hybrid, and the hybrid gets even more. So the big question you got to ask is, do you want the guaranteed V8 reliability, or are you willing to trade the guaranteed reliability for more efficiency and more power that the new powertrain provides? Before we move forward with this review, I do want to mention if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Now, another big change with Toyota from the previous gen to the new gen is the material use with the truck. So these are actually both SR5s. I picked these out so they're more comparable, and you'll notice something right off the bat. If you look at the previous gen SR5, you can see lots of metal throughout the truck, whereas the new one, you've got lots of plastic throughout the truck. And I mean, you can see with the elements, the badge on the old truck, everything's like massive on it as well, which is funny. But I mean, just like tapping the different panels, the new truck is definitely way more plasticky compared to the old truck. And there are some benefits and some downsides. One obvious benefit with being more plasticky is rust, right? Metal, under the right circumstances, if you don't take care of it properly, well, you're going to have rust problems. So you got to be a little bit more careful, whereas with a more plasticky vehicle, not so much. Now the next thing is weight. So the previous gen Tundra has a gross vehicle weight rating of 7,200 pounds. 1,270 is the payload. So that means that this vehicle weighs just under 6,000 pounds. So it's a pretty heavy beast. Now, the new Tundra also has a gross vehicle weight rating of about 7,200 pounds, 7,210. Payload is 1,380. So the new truck does weigh a little bit less. It's just over 100 pounds less, which actually isn't as much of a difference as you would have thought given all of the plastic elements. But they did save a little bit of weight, and also the engine probably helps out with the weight saving too. Now, the new truck uses fancy multi-link suspension, whereas the previous gen truck uses leaf springs. So at this point, I think you guys are probably seeing a trend. With the previous gen Tundra and Toyotas in general, they were using stuff that was guaranteed to be durable if you took care of it properly. Whereas with the new one, you can see there's a much bigger emphasis on efficiency, but then also comfort as well. And let's pop to the interior to show this. So here's a quick look at the interior of the previous gen Tundra. You can see these seats, and this truck has like 90,000 miles. They look basically brand new. And look at the bolstering and everything on it. And I will say that these seats are decently comfortable, but you notice with how the bolstering is shaped and all that, if you keep hitting into this time and time again, it's not going to show a massive amount of wear. So they focused kind of on making it durable. And then look at like all the plastics all throughout and everything, just the material use in general. You can tell that there's just an emphasis on, again, making things durable. Now if we start with the seats on the new Tundra, you can actually see a little bit of wear here on the bolster, not a massive amount, but notice the cushioning with the seats. And I'm not going to say that these seats aren't durable. I need to see like a super high mileage new gen Tundra to be able to figure that out, and we'll see if the engine can make it. I had to make the joke. But again, comfort is a big emphasis with this new Tundra, and it still has lots of plasticky elements. But you can see just like how much more modern the whole interior layout looks, and how they've I mean, again, the previous gen Tundra is not pretty at all inside. This, they got some things that kind of have like a more, I would say, beautiful look. It's still functional, utilitarian looking at the end of the day, but they've kind of made it a little bit prettier, a little bit more comfortable in general. So the next thing I want to do is I want to take out both of these trucks and see how they perform and see if the new one really does feel like it drives better than the previous gen. I forgot I gotta put the key. That's another change. You gotta put the key in the ignition with the old Tundra with the SR5. New one, she's got push button. Okay, let us set off in the old Tundra. And you know, part of this comparison that I'm doing is I do think I'm probably going to need to get a, I'm still debating, but I might need to get a truck in the next few years as we expand our little family farm. It's just nice to be able to have a truck bed. And you know, there's a lot of trucks on the market, and I'm kind of like, you know what, should I do the new Tundra that might be cool to do on YouTube content, or should I just go with the previous gen? Because I've been getting a lot of previous gen Toyotas. We just bought a previous gen Sequoia. I have a previous gen Land Cruiser. And here's what I'll say about the previous gen. They did such a good job. And the thing that I find funny is when these were selling brand new, everyone was like really hyped up about new like screen tech and everything, and everyone was kind of like, I don't care about the rest of the vehicle. But now that these have been discontinued, everyone's going back to them and going, man, I really like the mechanical stuff that Toyota did back then, and even the previous gen. So first off, when it comes to the drive, this is so good. The V8 has plenty of power. It's really smooth, and I can tell you as someone who owns a Land Cruiser, I know I have the 8-speed that's a little bit different than the 6-speed, but we also have a Sequoia with a 6-speed. It's just such a good powertrain. Like, I have never had a situation where I've been annoyed with the powertrain. It's smooth like this. You can see just idling 1500 RPMs roughly. It's just smooth. And the rest of the trucks, I mean, this is a baseline truck. It's nice. The only thing that I think people might not like with this version of the bigger Toyotas, the Tundra and the Sequoia, is the steering is a little bit loose. There's a little bit of on-center vagueness, but again, it's something you get it used to pretty quickly, and it doesn't really bother me at all. And I actually like the hydraulic rack that Toyota used for this generation, because you actually get a little bit of feedback still at the road. As I was saying, there's no steering feedback like whatsoever with the new stuff. And this definitely has kind of like a bigger, heavier feel. Like, this feels very trucky, and that is something to note. And part of that's the leaf springs, the shocks, just everything they did suspension wise with this. Again, I never get annoyed with the power. The only thing that's a downside of this engine is just the fuel economy. 14.9, again, every single vehicle that I've driven with this engine so far, our Sequoia gets 15 miles per gallon, the Land Cruiser, and this shows like 15 miles per gallon. It's like, you drive this engine, you're gonna get 15 miles per gallon, which in my mind isn't actually all that bad. I know some people are gonna gawk at that, but pretty much every single vehicle I've owned over the last like 6 years gets about 15 miles per gallon. It's like, you get anything that's large, it's gonna get fuel economy in that range, right? And I would rather have 15 miles per gallon and have the peace of mind of knowing that like this is gonna run for basically forever. As long as I do the regular maintenancing, it's gonna run forever, as opposed to a vehicle that gets slightly better fuel economy and you're having to repair stuff all the time, or you feel uncertain about it. Like, should I really take that cross-country trip, right? Like, you ask someone that has this generation of Toyota or the previous gen if they would, and they have like 100, 200, 300,000 miles, and you say, hey, would you take your vehicle cross-country? No questions asked, they would, right? They trust it. And so in closing with the previous gen Tundra, the biggest downside about this generation, and of course the previous generation of Toyota, and if you want me to do reviews on the previous gen Toyotas, let me know. Like the Sequoia, the 100 series Land Cruiser, I can do that, the Tundra and everything. The biggest downside is just rust, right? You ask anyone like, hey, what's your advice on buying a 100 series or 200 series, or what's your advice on buying this Tundra, that Tundra, they're always going to say rust. That is the biggest downside with this generation of Toyota. And so as long as you get a vehicle that doesn't have crazy rust or anything like that, and is just well taken care of, and then you continue to take care of it, not a problem. But let's pop in the new one. Push button start. And just the difference with the door sound when you close it, it's not horrible, but it's definitely, this has manual seat. What the heck? So the other Tundra has, I have to stick the key in the ignition, but I get power seats, and this one, manual seats, but I get a push button start. I would rather stick the key in the ignition and have power seats personally, but neither is a big deal breaker for me. So the new Tundra feels significantly different right off the bat. First off, what you notice is it's a lot less, it's still a truck, it's still big, but it's a lot less truck-like. The suspension's a little bit more, and especially the rear end, you notice the rear end's a lot more planted. It's a lot less, like, I would say stiff, probably is a good way to describe it. And so overall, yeah, the ride quality is better. Like, it is better on road that way. And this does handle better too. And the steering, again, I don't really know what's happening with the front end. I kind of just got to feel it through the body of the truck. But you know, it's very direct. There's no real, I mean, there's way less vagueness than the old one, that's for sure. But you'll notice just, excuse me, just like the old one, it's just hovering. And again, this isn't even the hybrid. The hybrid's even better with its low end torque, but this just kind of hovers around that 1500 RPM range. So you can tell that Toyota really, like, they didn't want to have people concede that low end torque that you get from the V8 with this. And so yeah, it has to produce a lot more torque to give you the same outcome that the V8 does, right? Because this, again, just driving this regularly, the V8 with 401 pound-feet of torque can do this 1500 RPM dance, and with the 6-speed, that this has to have 479 pound-feet of torque and an 8-speed, or sorry, 10-speed. Getting stuff mixed up here. And that's usually what you feel in the real world when you go to a smaller displacement, fewer cylinders engine, is you always have to have more power to have a similar feel as what you have with a larger displacement, larger engine. Just how it works in the real world. Handling, yeah, overall handling's better. And when it comes to power, here's what I'll say. This has good power. It's not as smooth as the V8. And it's impossible to beat the smoothness of a V8 with a V6. You can get close with an inline 6, but yeah, with a V6, it's really hard. The hybrid does get really close, but it's still not there. So that is one downside about the new one. I'd say it's quieter too. Like insulation, everything's probably a little bit better with this. So overall, I mean, there's a lot of improvements with the truck. But when you drive them back to back, the old one doesn't feel bad. And something to note, so the old truck had, you know, and who knows how that previous owner took care of it. The old truck had like 90,000 miles. This has like 12,000 miles. And I feel like the old truck doesn't really show that much more wear on it. I mean, it did have some points where I saw a little bit of rust and stuff. It wasn't structural, but, you know, when you get a higher mileage vehicle, you're going to have some, when it's covered in metal, you're going to have some points that are going to show a little bit of rust here and there. But yeah, it's an interesting transition. And I would say that based on what Toyota people care about, the new Tundra is objectively different, but I wouldn't say that it's better. For some people it might be, right? People that care about efficiency and comfort and modern tech, they're gonna love the new Tundra and the new Toyotas in general. But for people that just care about, hey, does it start up every single morning? Does it get me from A to B every single morning? That's not going to be as important. And I mean, let's see what this is showing fuel economy wise. Okay, let's go over. Come on. 17 miles per gallon. So, I mean, I don't know how long that trip is. That wasn't the trip that we just did. That's just what it's saved at. So for 2 miles per gallon, roughly, which one, right? You gonna go for the twin turbo engine? You're gonna go for the V8? Let me hear your thoughts on the comparison. Would you go previous gen Toyota or new gen Toyota?